This guy is William Empson, and he wrote a book called Types of Ambiguity. He was a literary critic who wanted to help explain the way that language gets rich. So he was into irony, and you see 7 there as a specific number, and ambiguity is about a lack of specificity. So that tension is funny. Funny. Empson, colorful guy, he wrote 7 Types of Ambiguity when he was 22, studying at Cambridge, and his teacher, I.A. Richards, considered him a genius. He said, this guy could produce an endless swarm of lively rabbits from his hat. But then he was kicked out of school for having condoms in his room, and he went to China to teach without graduating. But at that point, the Japanese were invading, so he had to flee the University of Peking and slept on a blackboard in the mountains and wandered teaching English poetry from memory. He had a wife, Hedda, who he came back to London with later, and they had a famously dynamic marriage. She had 2 lovers, 2 kids by other lovers. One of her lovers once broke her ribs in a rowdy dinner party. And Empson took some of these people under his wing. He got one of her lovers a job, fed them whiskey. He himself had younger male lovers, and then many times everyone in this circle lived together under the same roof in a bohemian rhapsody. One gets caught up. You can get caught up just with that one example, because the word promiscuous can refer to a person who sleeps around. But it can also refer to a mind that touches, holds, or is drawn to many ideas. So if you say something like, Empson has a promiscuous mind, a thinker who lacks the grace of giddy language might insist on figuring this out. When you used the word promiscuous, now did you mean that he had a sex life or that his mind was large? But Empson might be more inclined to say, hold on, something happened with language here. Maybe you were drawn to the word promiscuous, Empson would say, because the word does have more than one meaning, and even unconsciously you were drawing some connection between the hunger for books and the hunger for bodies and knowledge, and or the way one stifles the other. It's not all consciously clear, but you picked a word that evokes these relationships, and that gives the word poetry and power. And that's why Empson said ambiguity is a special thing, that sometimes our language, by pulling on more than one meaning, makes us even more intelligent than we consciously know ourselves to be. So now we're going to go through the 7 ways that he said a word can mean more than one thing, and so find its strength. Empson loved this idea. There are exactly 7 ways, that's a joke, for a word to be ambiguous. The first type of ambiguity that Empson puts on his list. Later, the other 6 types will have to do with confusion in the mind and other strange mental states. This one is pretty simple. It's what we normally call metaphor, when one line stands for more than one thing, and so creates some resonance or music in the mind. So an example he uses to show the first type of ambiguity is a line from Shakespeare's sonnets. Fair ruin choirs where late the sweet birds sang. Shakespeare does something with that sentence because you have to think of 2 things at once. Birds sit in a line in a tree. We sit in a line in church. We sing. They sing up to the heavens. And when they look up, they might see the sun through the stained glass like leaves. We look up at a knotted cross, and they look at bare pines. In any case, you get the idea. The line from Shakespeare, fair ruined choirs, where late the sweet birds sang, puts 2 worlds together so that the feelings you've had in nature inform the feelings you have in church, and vice versa. And one line brings those 2 heads together for you. The second type of ambiguity is where 2 words that mean something slightly different are put together so that a new idea comes. That new idea lives somewhere in between the 2 old ideas. One example might be this line 4th century Chinese poetry in translation. Swiftly the years beyond recall, solemn the stillness of this spring morning. So Empson says you normally have two different ways or categories of thinking about time. On the one hand, we have time at a distance. That's the generations, the eras, the years, the invisible stuff that holds us. And on the other hand, there's still time, and that's when you're looking at your watch, waiting for someone to show up, or trying to get to the supermarket before it closes, or finishing an assignment before it's due. So time is either this distant, sweeping thing that just happens. You can't control it or know it. Or it's a more immediate issue, a practical problem, something to deal with. So Empson's point is that when you have a line like, swiftly the years beyond recall, solemn the stillness of this spring morning, two different ways we have of thinking about time, which aren't usually brought together, are brought together and produce a new way of being in time. Okay, we're on the third type of ambiguity now, and this is the pun. It's when somebody on purpose uses a word that has more than one meaning and plays those meanings off of each other for a joke, to have some kicks. Imagine this girl lying in the grass, and she's lying there and she's thinking about time, and she's trying to figure out the big questions of time. She can't quite figure it out, and her friend comes along and they start philosophizing, and the friend says, "You're here lying in the grass, you look so wise." And the girl in the grass goes, "Yeah, I'm wise. You know what I'm doing here? I'm lying about time. That's what I'm doing." See, she played and made a little pun. She said, I'm lying, as in I'm telling things that aren't true, and I'm lying around, lying in the grass. So she used one word with power to evoke two things. So there you go. That's ambiguity number 3, the pun. Type number 4 is a little different. In type number 4, like in 3, you say something that could mean more than one thing at one time, but in 4, you don't really mean it. So what happens, it's like a Freudian slip, and it reveals your complicated state of mind. So say that girl's lying in the grass, and she's talking to her friend, and she says, "Me? I don't know anything about time. I'm just lying here." Oh my, I don't mean I'm lying. I mean, I don't mean that I'm telling you lies. I mean, wait, what am I saying? I'm lying here. Okay, so what happened was that her words went somewhere she didn't mean for them to go. And she made a little joke, but she didn't mean for it to make it. And so, wow, words, when they mean more than one thing, reveal to you that you've got a more complex state of mind than you even consciously knew you had. So that's it. That's ambiguity number 4. When you say something that shows you that you had more thinking going on than you could quickly articulate. The 5th type of ambiguity is what Empson called a fortunate confusion. You know this one. It's when some people say, "Oh, I can only think by talking," or "I can only think by writing." Words build on words until they lead to a thought. You couldn't have planned the thought, but you talked your way there. Words teach you. So you have that girl in the grass, and she's saying stuff like, "Oh no, I don't know anything about time. I'm not so wise. I'm just lying here. What am I doing? I'm like lying. What? What am I, like a snake in the grass or making up stuff?" Wait, it's kind of funny. Like, look at maybe I'm a snake in the grass. Yeah, maybe I'm a liar. I'm a big fat liar. Okay, conclusion form. That's what I'm doing here in the grass. So that's ambiguity number 5. One word can lead to another word and land you in a thought that you didn't plan to have. So type number 6 is when you say something, but what you say is sort of a placement word or an empty word, and whoever's listening to you needs to invent whatever you mean. So an example is, "How you doing? What's up? Yo, what up?
What up, cuz? What up, blood? What up, gangsta? What up, blood? What up, cuz? What up, blood? What up, gangsta?
Some words are ambiguous because of their lack of content or meaning. Instead, they're an invitation to the other person. Fill it in. You know what I'm saying? No word needed. And that's how they're ambiguous with power. That's it. Type 6. You fill it in. The seventh type of ambiguity is a tension that is too big to calm or tame. There are some things like old and young, hunter and hunted, pursuer and pursued, loved and beloved, light and dark, that only exist in opposition to each other. Empson said, think of the Sumerian fighters who are always locked in a fight on a cave wall. Part of you is roused and wants to see one side win, but the wiser part of you knows that these two things get their meaning through a fight that doesn't end. Empson said that some of the greatest political speeches use ambiguity number 7, like, "We compose the greatest nation that has been on this earth, and we are deeply humbled by the task before us." Or, "We are a country of young and old, of parents and children, of business owners and artists, of rich and poor." Or, "Many great people have died so their ideas may live." That is, to know the power of certain oppositions, which will always be in conflict, is to distill human ignorance into a grace of style. That is ambiguity number 7, to recognize the oppositions which we never resolve.